Do you ever have one of those moments when you're sitting in a room full of people and still feel like you're entirely alone? I remember once I was at a gathering, nothing fancy, just people catching up, talking about work, vacations, who's doing what. I was smiling, nodding, doing all the right things, but inside, I felt like I was shrinking. Not because they were unkind, not because anything was wrong, but because I was so far from myself, trying to be presentable, likable, interesting, that I couldn't even hear myself anymore. And in that moment, I realized something painful but freeing. I had mastered the art of performing and forgotten the power of just being. If this message speaks to something deep inside you, take a moment, like, subscribe, comment, and share it forward. Let's keep creating spaces where honesty, healing, and humanity are truly seen. Do you ever feel like the world is constantly inviting you to shout louder, move faster, be seen more? Like somehow if you're not constantly proving your worth, you might disappear? It's a heavy thing to live in a culture that confuses visibility with value. We wake up in the morning and before we even take our first deep breath, there's this subtle, almost invisible pressure to be on. Post something, apply to something, be productive, be engaging, be relevant. And what gets lost in that noise is the quiet, sacred relationship we have with ourselves. You can lose your whole self trying to be heard in places that were never meant to understand you. I remember this stretch of time in my life where I was doing everything right. I was showing up, over-delivering, staying connected, being agreeable. I was bending and stretching to meet expectations I hadn't even agreed to, just trying to keep people comfortable around me. But the whole time, I could feel this quiet grief in my chest. It was like my soul was whispering, "Hey, remember me?" And one day, I just stopped. Not dramatically, not with a loud exit or a big announcement. I just stopped responding to the pull of everything outside me. I turned the volume down. I stopped trying to be everywhere. I didn't ghost anyone. I just gently disappeared from the noise so I could come back to myself. And you know what happened? Nothing. The world went on, the conversations went on, people kept living. It was both terrifying and freeing to realize that you can step away from the spotlight of other people's attention and the sun will still rise. That was the moment I learned this truth. I don't have to be loud to be worthy. I don't have to be everywhere to matter. It's countercultural to say, I'm going inward. It doesn't look impressive. It doesn't get applause. But it's one of the bravest things you can do, because turning inward means you're finally willing to be honest with your exhaustion, your grief, your confusion, your dreams, your need. And it's in that sacred space, the space no one else sees, that real growth begins. I'm not talking about cutting people off or isolating. I'm talking about choosing presence with yourself before pouring it out for everyone else. About saying, before I give the world my words, I'm going to sit with my truth. Before I let anyone tell me who I am, I'm going to ask myself what I know about who I've always been. Silence isn't absence, it's alignment. It's what happens when your heart, your body, and your mind finally agree to stop running and start listening. When you choose silence, you're not being passive. You're being intentional. You're pausing so your life doesn't become a reaction to everyone else's expectations. And yes, it can feel scary. Like you're missing something. Like you're falling behind. But what you're actually doing is coming back to you, to clarity, to the deep, anchored knowing that you're allowed to be whole and private. Sometimes, the most radical act of self-worth is simply choosing not to respond to what doesn't deserve your energy, and using that silence to repair, to reflect, to remember who you are underneath all the noise. So take your time. You don't owe anyone a version of you that's easy to consume. You don't have to keep dancing to stay in the room. Let yourself be quiet. Let yourself be seen, not by the crowd, but by the one person who's always needed your attention most. You. When we're hurting, when we feel betrayed, misunderstood, abandoned, or invisible, there's this instinct that kicks in. We want to explain, to tell our side, to justify our feelings, to prove that we didn't deserve what happened. We want to make the pain make sense. But healing doesn't respond to urgency. It doesn't answer to audiences. It doesn't need witnesses to be real. Healing happens slowly, quietly, beneath the surface of the life everyone else sees. It's easy to believe that our healing has to be shared in order to be valid, that we must turn it into a post, a lesson, a conversation, a response. But the truth is, the most sacred forms of healing usually happen in invisible spaces. In your kitchen at midnight sitting on the floor. In your car when you finally exhale the breath you didn't know you were holding. In the shower when the tears come without warning and you finally let them. There's no crowd, no applause, no clarity. Just you and your ache. And a small, trembling willingness to let that ache be seen. By you. We live in a world that celebrates the loudest voice in the room, but real transformation often begins in silence, in solitude, in the honest, private reckoning of your own heart. Healing is not a performance. It's a personal commitment to stop carrying pain like it's your identity, and to start sitting with it like it's your teacher. Think of a wound, a deep physical one. You don't leave it uncovered for everyone to see. You clean it. You cover it. You protect it from the elements. And most importantly, you give it time. Emotional wounds are no different. You don't need to prove your healing. You just need to honor it. Let it be slow. Let it be silent. Let it be sacred. There was a time when I kept trying to process my pain through conversation, constantly unpacking it with others, hoping that someone's validation would speed it up. But all it did was keep the pain alive. I was touching the wound too often, reopening it in my effort to explain it. It was the one where I woke up on the weekend with no one to examine me. When I finally did, I was trapped and untied. Finally unpacking it with others, hoping to untie it, let it freeze so that I could finally get rid of it. Constantly, and one day, I realized, my healing doesn't need to be understood by others. It needs to be held gently by me. So I stopped talking about it, not because I was avoiding it, but because I was finally listening to it. I created space to sit with it, just me, my truth, and the silence. No advice, no feedback, no spotlight, just stillness and slow repair. There's a beautiful kind of strength that grows in that quiet. Not the loud, dominant kind of strength that flexes and fights, but the tender, grounded kind of strength that says, I am healing, and I don't need to explain it to you. Because when you're truly doing the work, you stop needing everyone else to see it. You stop broadcasting every step of your process. You stop explaining your silence, justifying your distance, or proving your growth. You learn that healing isn't a conversation. It's a choice. Every single day, it's a choice to show up for yourself even when no one's clapping, and in time, the silence that once felt lonely begins to feel like home. The solitude that once felt heavy starts to feel like safety. You realize you were never meant to be performing your progress. You were meant to be living it. So if you're in a season where you don't want to talk much, that's okay. If you're withdrawing, not out of bitterness, but because your soul is tired, that's okay too. You are allowed to outgrow conversations. You are allowed to protect your healing. You are allowed to keep your evolution private. Some of your deepest breakthroughs will happen in rooms no one else sees. Let that be enough. You are not broken for needing quiet. You're brave for choosing it. There's this sacred moment in your healing journey where you start realizing just how valuable your energy is. Not in a cliche, self-help poster kind of way, but in a deeply earned, bone-deep understanding that you cannot keep leaking yourself to stay connected to people who don't notice you're bleeding. We often confuse access with love. We think, if they can reach me anytime, I'm being kind. If I keep showing up, even when I'm tired, I'm being strong. If I keep sharing, even when it hurts, I'm being open. But here's the truth that not everyone will tell you. Access to you is a privilege, not a right. And the more you grow, the more intentional you must become about where your energy goes. It took me a long time to learn that not everyone is entitled to my inner world. Not everyone can hold the weight of my truth. And not everyone deserves the softest parts of me, especially when their presence costs me my peace. There's a version of you, maybe a past version, who used to over-explain, over-apologize, overextend. That version of you tried so hard to be the glue. You smoothed things over, you kept showing up, you kept making room for people who rarely made room for you, and maybe, for a while, that kept you feeling safe. But eventually, it drained you. And now you're starting to realize you don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify space. You don't have to defend your quiet. You can simply say, with or without words, I choose me today. Protecting your energy doesn't mean you're shutting people out. It means you're no longer inviting chaos in. It means you've learned to differentiate between what nourishes your soul and what only survives by feeding off it. It means that celebrating your wins is your way to flourish. It means disregarding failure and discrediting buildup around failure. Let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always see your silence as a threat. That's okay. Let them. When you stop explaining, stop engaging, stop reacting, the people who were never really listening in the first place will start to feel uncomfortable. And that discomfort, it's not your burden to carry. You are allowed to get quiet without guilt. You are allowed to say no without explanation. You are allowed to choose presence over performance, because your peace, it's not a luxury, it's your responsibility. I've come to think of my energy like a small sacred flame I'm carrying through a windy world. If I don't protect it, it blows out. If I let everyone crowd around it, some will warm themselves, but others will smother it without even meaning to. So I hold it gently, I shield it, I protect its light, not because I don't love others, but because I finally love myself enough to stop giving away what keeps me alive. And here's the thing. When you start doing that, you begin to glow in a different way. Not loud, not flashy, but steady, quietly radiant. People might not notice it at first. Some might even criticize it. But the ones who are meant for you, they'll feel it. They'll recognize that light because they've worked to protect their own too. And the others? Let them wonder. It's found in the moments when you look at your own reflection, tired, soft-eyed, honest, and say, I'm proud of the way I protected myself today. So if your soul is asking you to slow down, to step back, to stay silent, listen. That voice, that knowing, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. Protect your energy. It's the light you carry through everything else. There comes a time when you stop asking, what do they think of me? And start asking, what do I think of me? And that shift, that quiet, internal turning point is where your real life begins. It doesn't always happen with clarity or confidence. Often it begins in exhaustion, in heartbreak, in disappointment. It begins the moment you realize you've been trying to win the approval of people who were never really listening. And you're just tired. Tired of chasing validation, tired of reshaping yourself, tired of wondering if silence makes you cold or if stillness makes you weak. You begin to realize the life you've been trying to prove yourself worthy of wasn't built for you in the first place. I remember a moment, not a big one, just a quiet Sunday morning, where I looked around and realized how many parts of my life were built on people's expectations, not my own values. I wasn't speaking up where it mattered. I was shrinking where I should have been expanding. I was saying yes to things that drained me because I didn't want to seem ungrateful or difficult. And then something shifted. Not in fire, but in truth. I realized I don't want to abandon myself just to be included anymore. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When you start focusing on yourself, when you stop being so available, when you choose silence over defending every boundary, people may interpret it however they want. Some will call you selfish. Others will say you've changed. And they're right. You have changed. You've stopped making yourself digestible. You've stopped shrinking to fit rooms that only loved you when you were silent and small. You've stopped explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. That's growth. That's courage. And yes, it can be lonely at first. There's a grief that comes with reclaiming your life. You grieve the relationships that only survived because you abandoned your needs. You grieve the version of you that once found identity in being everything for everyone. You grieve the comfort of people-pleasing, even if it was never real peace. But on the other side of that grief, there's a sacred stillness. There's a sense of self you never knew was possible. You wake up one day and realize you don't need to be invited to every conversation. You don't need to be in every room. You don't need to defend every no. You are allowed to outgrow roles that once kept you safe. You are allowed to become someone who speaks less, not because you have less to say, but because what you're building now is rooted in discernment, not desperation. There's a quote I once read. It said, "The quieter you become, the more you can hear." And I never really understood it until I chose silence. In the silence, I heard my own intuition again. I heard the dreams I had buried beneath obligation. I heard the boundaries that were screaming to be honored. I heard the small true voice that had been drowned out by all the noise, and it whispered, "This is who you are. You don't need to convince anyone else. Just be her. Just be him. Just be you." There is power in not responding. There is clarity in not explaining. There is liberation in not proving. And when you finally get to that place where you focus on your own growth, your own peace, your own healing, without needing anyone to clap for it, you become untouchable in the best way. Not hard, not cold, but whole. You don't need to chase anymore. You don't need to beg anymore. You don't need to narrate your worth anymore.